Good evening. I'm Jeff Spence from the Office of Alumni Relations at Thomas Jefferson University, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's program, Coaching in Context. Tonight, our panel from Jefferson's College of Rehabilitation Sciences will explore how learning how to coach can help you engage your patients, students, clients, and their caregivers in identifying and overcoming the barriers to accomplishing their goals. To begin our program, I am pleased to welcome our guests, Associate Professor Marie-Christine Potvin and Clinical Research Coordinators Nicole Gerhardt and Rachel Kim. Dr. Potvin, please take it away.
I'm so glad that we were able to talk with everyone today about coaching in context. Nicole, Rachel, and I are really passionate about how coaching has changed how we are, all three of us are occupational therapists, and are really passionate about how coaching has really influenced and changed our practice as occupational therapists. And I love to be able to share this knowledge with all of you. Let me take 1 second to share my screen. So this evening we will be doing a bit more of a lecture style. Very often when we talk with clinicians about coaching, it's a very interactive, hands-on kind of practice approach. So today in this format, I know that many of you maybe just listening in to us while you're cooking dinner or doing something else. So it's gonna be a bit more of a lecture style, but there will be moments where we'll be asking you guys questions. And it would be really helpful if you can either in your chat box or with your microphone, whichever is easiest, depending what you're doing, sort of answer those questions with us and really engage with us, as it will help us target and tailor what we're talking about to your experience as clinicians. Jeff already shared with us sort of the mix of who is with us today. So there's at least a couple of dietitians or nutritionists, nurses, physicians, and some OTs in the audience. So, and I'm sure there's many other professions as well. So we will do our best to really kind of tap into our knowledge of these different professions to really sort of tailor the examples that we provide to what might be your daily practice. That being said, we might be using some words or examples that are not exactly what you do in your daily life. It's hard to do a perfectly good job with such a diverse group of participants. And so I will either rely on you guys to reach out and let us know if we can tailor something a bit more, or just kind of convert what we're describing to what it would look like into your own practice. So we will actually start with a poll because we want to get a sense of whether you've experienced any of the statements that we have here in working with patients or clients or their caregivers. And Jeff, I'm assuming that you will be the one who sees the result. Is that correct?
Yes, everyone is still answering, and so we'll just give another few seconds here. We're about halfway there. Okay, and our results are in. What we see is number 1 and 3 both have 90% of our audience, and 2 and 4 both have 80%. So pretty even across the board.
Thanks for that, Jeff. And so it seems like as we expected that you are experiencing what Nicole, Rachel, and I are experiencing as well, which is in our practice. Thank you for sharing the results, Jeff. I can see them now. In our practice, we experience on a regular basis making recommendations, or whether that's an exercise or it's a medication, or and our patients or their caregivers are not kind of following through on what we recommended. That was my experience as an occupational therapist, both in school-based practice as well as in the clinic, and it was a bit frustrating. So we're actually wondering what you believe might be causing those patients, clients, or even colleagues not to follow recommendations broadly. What might be some of the things that causes that? And you're welcome to type in your answers in the chat box or to turn on your microphone and tell us verbally. And I'll give you about a minute to do that. Michelle is saying that I'm assuming, Jeff, that everybody can see these comments in the chat box, but I'll talk about them out loud as well. So she's saying that, maybe the clients or the patients are still in their routine, or maybe they're not quite certain about how to go about starting this new habit or program. So they might, they need to do more exercise, or know they need to change the diet, but are really kind of stuck into the how to get there. Yeah, and they might not have a lot of buy-in to the recommendations. Yeah, sometimes we can provide the best recommendation from a clinical point of view, or even from a research-based point of view. But if it's not a good fit for the client's life, that recommendation is not likely to be implemented. Thank you both. And I think those are probably the reasons that I've encountered clinically most often. Sometimes it's even because I kind of misunderstood what the client's preferences are. And so my recommendations just are not a good fit for their actual preferences. And so these reasons, these challenges with our clients implementing some of our ideas and how we were practicing as clinicians is really what brought us to thinking about the use of coaching in our practice. Coaching, however, means a number of different things. And so we thought it would be helpful to start with kind of laying the groundwork in terms of what coaching truly is. So when we hear the words coaching, sometimes, we're thinking about the soccer coach, or if like me, you're a French Canadian and hockey is your passion and the Stanley Cup just ended, coaching for me is, a hockey coach. But sometimes we think of it as mentoring. The term coaching is used when in actuality, what we're doing is we're mentoring, a colleague, for example. Sometimes the word coaching is used when we're providing a consultation to. And again, it's not necessarily wrong, but that's not the use of the word coaching that we have in mind. And finally, what the term coaching is often used when we actually are meaning patient education or patient training or clients training. And so in the forms of coaching, like health coaching, for example, there's a combination of more traditional coaching, which is what we'll talk about in just a minute, as well as this kind of patient education consultant expert sort of role. And so health coaching, although the term coaching appears in the definition, is something very different from the kind of coaching that we'll describe in just a second. All right, so I've told you what coaching isn't, what we're not including when we're thinking about coaching, but what is coaching? How are we defining coaching? So we are really thinking about forms of coaching that meets the International Coaching Federation's definition of coaching, and you can see that here on my screen. Coaching, according to the ICF, is a partnering with clients in thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. Now, we have to keep in mind that this ICF definition is not just about for health providers, because this style of coaching is actually used in, for example, executive coaching for business professionals. So it's broader than what we would do within healthcare, but it is the foundation to what we mean by coaching. And so we've taken this definition and we've sort of morphed it to use more healthcare style lingo. And so if we take this ICF coaching into our own lingo, it becomes something like this. The provider or coach, through conversations, facilitates the patient's or client's self-discovery of insights and solution, enabling progress toward their goals. This facilitating of self-discovery, this aspect in the middle of this definition, is really what makes this style of coaching so different from what most of us do normally in our daily practice? You might be thinking at the same time, there is no way that I could do this full time, right? Like there is no way that you wouldn't, as a physician or as an OT or PT or a nutritionist, use your expert knowledge to provide some information to your clients. And so we're not talking about coaching in a pure form at all times, right? And that's why the title of the presentation was around infusing coaching in our practice, really embedding aspects of coaching in what we do in more traditional practice. And so that's coaching in general. If we bring this coaching in general to this form of coaching that we have developed at Jefferson, and that we've called coaching in context, what we really have attempted to do is really operationalize this definition of coaching in something that we could teach, because we teach it in the classroom, we teach it to our students in clinical rotations, and that we can use in practice. And what you see on the slide is this conceptualization of this idea of coaching applied to healthcare, rehabilitation, and education, and phrased in a manner that that we believe speaks to health professionals. So actually, let's start on the right-hand side of the screen in the section that's all in white. And Nicole and Rachel, please chime in at any point. And so we're going to see this breakdown of what we saw in the definition. So it's definitely conversation-based, right? In this coaching approach, it's really about talking, but it is not talk therapy. It is solution-focused. So we're not focusing backward on understanding what went wrong. We're focused forward on how can we make this better moving forward. It's train-based, and so it really builds on the client's strengths as opposed to try to remediate some of their challenges. Our model of coaching is anchored in positive psychology. And there's a lot of research on positive psychology, and in essence, the way that we've embedded this into our coaching model is really thinking of the clients as a resourceful expert, and us as sort of helping them access those internal resources. It is fully client driven, and if any of you work in the adult disability world of intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, that terminology of client-driven also comes out of mental health. That's a terminology that is used as sort of one step above client-centered, where really the client is at the core of all decision. And that's a little bit past what we see in client-centered care, right? So it's we're there to foster the client's self-discovery. The client is the decision maker, and we are empowering them and engaging them in the entire process. It is also evidence-informed. It's based on, there's a lot of research on coaching in general in healthcare, even this approach to coaching, so the more conversation-based, not patient training, not consultation style of coaching. And then of course, we are generating our own evidence, and we'll share at the end, if we have time, a couple of the studies that we've conducted and are conducting. So on the right-hand side, you kind of have those key ingredients to coaching. And then on the left-hand side, you have a visual representation of the process that we employ. So each coaching session is comprised of three main elements. One is connecting, one is the discovery phase, and then one is the planning phase. And you can see that in the circle. The circles are bigger for connect and discover and for plan, because we spend more time on those things. And the circles are all meeting in the middle, because when you're coaching, it isn't like you do connect, then when you're done, you move to discover, and then when you're done, you're moving to plan. There's this usually there's this sort of movement where you go between those phases back and forth. And actually, you'll get to see that in a video in a couple of seconds. Now, within those big categories of connect, discover, and plan, there's some sub terminologies, there's kind of sub parts to it. And so in a full coaching session, you would want to start on a positive note. You would want to establish the focus or the goal for the session. And then know from the beginning how you will know at the end whether you've met the client's goal for that session or not. Then there's a phase in the middle where through questions and reflective listening, you try to bring those insight and this exploration of potential solution through things that we're calling bridges and barriers, as well as brainstorming. And when the client is ready, they will start developing an action plan for themselves based on that conversation. So I always find describing coaching to be a little bit challenging, and we're hoping that a video will help. And so I'm going to be sharing a video with everyone. The volume is low on the video. And so I'm going to ask you to turn up the volume on your end. It's max. It's a max volume on my end, but you can turn up the volume on your end. And I'm also going to put the captions in there. You'll see the video will begin as I'm doing a recap of the goal of the client. So I am the coach, and this is my client. And the video begins as I'm doing a recap of our goal. I will not play the entire video. It's about 8 minutes long. We're going to play about 4 or 5 minutes. If you're having a hard time viewing or hearing the video, please let us know in the chat box and we'll adjust. So you said that you wanted to increase your exercise, and that you would like to do this within the next month or so. Right now, for the last year or so, you've been exercising not at all, no days out of the week. Although this changed like this week, which is great, since you're clearly working on this goal. And so what we're aiming for within the next month or so is 3 days a week of exercise.
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes.
Tell me about what's been helpful in the past in terms of exercising, and then what's been challenging.
So I need like immediate gratification. I guess that's what it is. And so the hobby that I found that worked for me is making cards. I think that relates to my exercising in that, you know, I want to exercise this week and I want to see that there's a difference by the end of the week, you know, so I'm easily discouraged, I guess.
How would you see a difference by the end of the week in terms of exercise? How does that translate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually think it translates, and I guess this is the good part, right, of it, in my energy level.
So one of the benefits is your increased energy level.
So one of the benefits, I'm really glad you're talking to me about this, because it's on a continuum for me, in that, you know how when people talk about endorphins and feeling really good with exercising, yeah, that doesn't happen to me. I exercise, I'm tired. It freaking poops me out to exercise.
It's tiring, so it's a barrier. It's tiring.
Right. But I do notice that after I've been doing it, I have more energy.
So you feel overall better.
I do. Can I give you one more barrier? That's, I think, pretty big. When to work out.
When to work.
Okay. So when to work out for me is, it works best if I do it when I get up in the morning. Okay. The barrier comes in that I am not in any way, shape, or form a morning person. I am not somebody that's willing to give up sleep in order to exercise.
Sounds like sleep is really important.
I'm just not. Yes.
Sleep is really important.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it's good to know that about yourself, right? Because then it gives us the parameters for us to work around.
Okay.
Figure things out. That's perfect. Okay. Tell me about a period of time when you were able to exercise more than you do now. And what you were doing then.
I committed. I committed to, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do Weight Watchers. And, you know, and so that combination of exercising and Weight Watchers really did help. This week I gave myself permission. So I don't give myself permission many times. I gave myself permission to do 30-minute sessions.
30 minutes.
So if you do 30 minutes straight, that counts as my exercise for the day.
Will you give me permission to amend our goal just a little bit and
Absolutely.
add the 30 minutes in there? So
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're talking about 30 minutes of exercise.
Yeah.
3 times a week.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to skip a portion of the video so we can see sort of the end of the video. Let's see how far I can go to the video.
I guess.
It could be pretty challenging.
Yeah. So for me, being accountable to somebody.
Okay. Like whom?
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea what that could be. Because my husband is very supportive, right? So it's not like he will automatically say, well, babe, I noticed that you worked out 3 days a week, right? Like 3 days this week. He notices I've been exercising. Yeah. But so I'll have to be like, babe, can you believe I worked out 3 days this week? And then I'll get that, you know, where it would just be really nice for him to be able to say, wow, like, I'm so impressed, or I don't know, like, hey, you make me want to do something. I don't know.
How might you make that happen? How might you reach that?
I could ask him.
Okay.
I could ask him. So yeah, I could.
I wonder, some people do well with like visual props. So he sees you exercise, but that's probably, you know, it's first thing in the morning and this whole day gets really busy. So one of the ways that you could make a visual calendar of your exercise in a prominent place. So it's visual, right? And then it might also prompt him to remember to, because I think it's going to be challenging for him to also remember. So things like that could be.
That's a good idea.
So in terms of accountability, it's like something visual could be, and
that's
again, we're
still I like that.
brainstorming.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
Any final brainstorming before we
I think
try to pick for the week?
I think that's the one I like the most right now. That I feel is doable, and I can, yeah.
So it sounds like you're ready to move into making a plan.
I like that. Okay.
My apologies for the barking in the background. I think we can pause the video here because I think you've seen enough of the video to get a sense. Rachel, Nicole, and guests, what did you guys notice in the video?
I can get everyone started. I noticed you affirming her. So even from the very beginning that you were like, this isn't something that you've been doing in a year, but you started today. So that's great. Or however you had worded it. And then her face kind of lit up, taking in that affirmation that you had given her. So that connecting that you were doing very early on there.
I noticed that you didn't just give her like ideas and solutions over and over again and just let her, but you really asked questions that forced her to really think about herself and her routines and what works for her and what's worked in the past. I know as like a therapist in typical practice, I feel like just healthcare practitioner in general, we typically give solutions to people. We're like, oh, do this, do that. Like, I'm handing you this, now go do it. But this was a very different approach.
I think what you guys are mentioning are sort of the 2 key elements of coaching that we're going to talk about in just a second. This idea of reflective listening and then what we call reflective responding. Did anyone else want to add anything else? I'm looking at the chat box, but nothing seems to be appearing. I hope it was helpful to see the video. I'm sorry that the volume is low. The volume got dimmed when the video went into YouTube for some reason. So when I think about coaching, and when we think about coaching, we think about sort of who we can coach. And so we can coach students in in an educational setting. We can coach clients and we can coach patients. I can tell you that as a professor at the university, I use coaching with my advisee on a regular basis, but I also use coaching with clients for sure. We can coach family members, and Nicole and Rachel can speak to that. I know that they are working on a couple of studies with that's done, and it's been done in a number of studies now where the coaching, at least with children, isn't necessarily done with the children themselves, but it's done with their parents instead. And finally, we can use coaching with colleagues. So as a school-based therapist, I would be asked to provide my recommendations, or do a consult with the classroom teacher or the special education teacher. And the vast majority of the time, those recommendations, the teacher is very polite and nods their head, yes, 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 but nothing really changes, nothing really gets done. So if we can sort of shift what we do and move from, consulting and being the expert telling them what to do to using a couple of the tips and tricks from this coaching model, then we start to give our colleagues a more integrate these recommendations in their practice because they're a better fit for what they have to do in the classroom. And you can see this happening probably with, resident and medical schools and fieldwork students. This colleague concept can really be broadened to mean a whole bunch of different things. So, Nicole and Rachel were just alluding to this. So, distilling kind of down sort of what coaching in context is, there's really two main ingredients to coaching in context and two things that can be infused in everything that we do as clinician, whether we're, fully being a coach in that moment, or we're just infusing some coaching principles into our practice. And those two things, as I've mentioned a few minutes ago, are reflective listening. And those are three main things: affirming statement, reflective statement, and summarizing statement, and then reflective responding. So asking the right questions, and those questions are usually open-ended and sort of, or sort of fine-tuning. Nicole, do you want to take it up from here?
Yeah, so the reasons of why we would do these things. So in reflective listening, we're doing this to connect or strengthen the relationship. So really building that rapport, ensuring clarity of comprehension. And there's times that you may think you're understanding something or you're hearing something in their tone. But if you don't really clarify that with the participant or the client that you're working with, it could be very off from what you are understanding this to be. And then promoting clients to be more responsive and positive, really leading to that buy-in that we talked about a little bit earlier, and helping the client gain insights versus, like Rachel alluded to earlier too, really giving the person what to do, giving that person instructions and just telling them what to do. And then reflective responding, again, leading to those insights, and then that solution finding. And then ultimately the client is making the decision versus us saying like, there you go, this is what you're going to do. Okay, good luck.
Nicole, when you said to lead the clients, mainly to clients' insights, it's an interesting concept. The idea that just repeating what they've said, affirming what they've said, so this reflective listening idea can actually lead the clients to having new insights. And you saw that in the video. At one point, I made a reflective statement, and the client responded, now that you're bringing it up, but I really wasn't bringing up any questions. I just repeated what she had said to me, and she was getting new insights.
And in that video as well, I think you mentioned this the last time we did this, Marie, but there was a moment where you had gave her a suggestion, but you had said that you had to cut it. There was a point where you had said, is it okay if I give you a suggestion? So if you're ever going to tell them something, really getting that permission beforehand before you're just giving them a solution. So that's not what Marie was doing in that video clip.
So in coaching in context, we really consider three aspects. So the person themselves, the person who we're coaching, the context of their lives, and that can be the physical environment, their family, but sort of, and then of course their goal, whatever they want or may need to accomplish. And so those three elements are sort of always in the forefront of our mind as we are using coaching with clients. So I've alluded to this a few times, but I'm pretty sure at this point you might be thinking, well, this is all nice and good, but there is no way that, you know, I can do what I need to do as a OT, physician, nurse, you know, whatever your profession is, and fully be a coach. And so for most of us in our daily practice, right, we cannot fully coach, do just coaching sessions, but we can definitely infuse some of the ingredients of coaching into our practice to enhance our practice further. And so we've been thinking about what that is. What could one infuse into their practice that would have the most impact? Kind of what can we steal from coaching and do in our daily practice that would have the most impact? And we've came out with two ideas, but Nicole is going to talk about the first one.
So the idea of reflective listening. So there are three different statements that we talked about on the last slide. The affirming statements, reflective statements, and summarizing statements that we'll show you guys some video clips of. So the definition of reflective listening is involving paying close attention to the content and feeling expressed by another person's communication. It is hearing and understanding and then letting the other person know that she, he, or they is being heard and understood. It cultivates connectedness, and it's accomplished through these three statements. And here are some brief definitions of these three statements to help you understand a little bit more their differences. Affirming statements are recognizing the client's strengths and acknowledging their behaviors that lead in the positive direction, no matter how big or small. So like we talked about in Marie's video clip, when she just said, that's great, you started doing this today. So giving those affirmations. Reflective statements, ensuring that there are no breakdowns in communication and helping the client feel heard. And then summarizing statements, ensure clear communication and links concepts to foster insights and solution generation. So here's an example of an affirming statement. It definitely sounds complicated. And obviously I am always in awe of you as a skater because I have none of those skills. So that is amazing that you have that talent. And that's really great that you joined something like that. What made you do that? Okay.
I'm trying to unmute, but I'm fighting with my computer and my mouse. So that was a really amazing example. And Nicole is very skilled at affirmation and a specific kind of affirmations that are called ACR. But that's not important in the moment. So nice job, Nicole.
And then here is an example of a reflective statement.
But really, it is something I want to do, and it is something that would be good to me. Like, it's fun. Like, it's like you said, it's a leisure activity. So it is definitely for myself. It's just, it's hard, like I said, with working from home and like not being in the routine. There's just hasn't been a lot of like drive to do, you know, you have to do what you have to do. And then there's like not a lot of change of scenery and change of pace. It's just all kind of the same. So it's hard.
Yeah. You know you want to do it. You just don't know when you can do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then here's a summarizing statement. It's a little similar to reflective, but summarizing is a bit more cohesive, pulling it all together and then making sure the client and you are on the same page.
One of the big difference between the two is that in a summarizing statement, you might be pulling a bunch of pieces of information that happen over different parts of the conversation, and you're pulling them together to kind of make them more cohesive. So if I understood this correctly, it's a young adult who is sometimes resisting engaging in tasks in all kinds of different ways, and sometimes but he is able to complete the work and will do a good job if he sees values in the work.
Yeah.
All right. So this was a whirlwind of just some examples of what one might say, right? And I'm sure you can imagine that you can be with any clients at any point, in your practice, and the clients and patients are sharing something with you. Right? Our instinct in general is, as a clinicians, is to build on that, right? Like the patient says something and we build on it. And the whole idea of reflective listening is to really pause and first begin by doing one of three things: affirming, reflective statements, or summarizing statements. So we thought at this point we could practice. So I will play a first excerpt, and this is, hopefully this is gonna work. This is gonna let me in. It's gonna take a second, Nicole. You wanna talk while I'm logging in?
Yeah, sure. So Rachel and I did a coaching session together, and ironically, I wasn't even thinking about this. It's similar goal area to what the first clip was that Marie was coaching on. But Rachel stated a goal of wanting to exercise more. She was noting that she was feeling a little weaker. She really isn't being as physically active as she maybe should or potentially would like to be. So we were discussing around that idea of ways that we could make that happen.
If I bring the video over, can you guys see the video?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm gonna play the video and Rachel is gonna share something. And at the moment where Nicole, as the coach, would say something in return, I will pause the video and ask everyone to type or tell us verbally what you would say if you were engaging in reflective listening. Let's practice this together.
Yeah, I think that it would be exploring some of the options. Like there was a few years back when I was living at my parents' house still, and I was looking into bouldering classes, like bouldering memberships at a gym nearby. I've moved since then, so I'm not actually sure if there's any around me now.
Okay.
But maybe exploring like different options of what's there. So like looking into some of those classes, like looking into some of those like ropes classes, they're like acrobatic. Terrible. There's a word for it. Or like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, or even just like a bouldering membership, and like seeing what's available in my community and around me.
Okay.
I think that would be good because the activity just seems a lot more fun. And then if I put some money into it, I feel like I'll be extra motivated to go too.
Yeah.
All right. So what might Nicole say back to Rachel in this moment? Right, so let's just listen to what Nicole actually said.
And it'll be like a good way to get us out of the apartment again. Like I said, we both work from home, so we definitely spend enough time inside.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be important to you to take the time to get out of your apartment and do these things with your husband. Is that how you would say?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. So then just to summarize what you were just saying about your next step, you would like to explore different options in your area for things like bouldering classes, which I need to look into because I have not heard of these before. So thank you for teaching me something new. Or possibly like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu type classes. So different things in your area. And that's the step you would like to take over the next week.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So
yeah, I think that it would be.
I'm just looking at the time. Rachel and Nicole, do you think it's okay if we skip the next examples? So we have a few more excerpts, but we'll skip them for now. So reflective listening, it might seem really common sense for you guys, and it might just be me, but for me, it wasn't instinctive. Like in a conversation, my first instinct is not just to reflect back what the other person say. In a conversation, my instinct is to add to the conversation. And so I've seen a lot of power in reflective listening, and it's completely changed my interactions, both with my clients as well as colleagues and students. But I needed to practice because it was definitely not the first thing that I was intending to do in a conversation. So to become good at reflective listening, we have to practice. The good news is you can practice this in your everyday life. You don't have to just practice with clients. You can practice with your spouse, with your children, with your colleagues, with your friends and family. And I know, because we've done talking about this before, Nicole has some anecdotes around this, and I know I have as well. I don't know, Rachel, if you do. You guys want to talk a little bit about sort of that experience of practicing this in your everyday life?
Yeah, the first person I practiced this with was my husband, and he was very confused as to why I was responding to him the way that I was, and actually really listening to him versus like, oh yeah, how was your day? And then kind of like a quarter of the way listening. And I totally agree with Marie. It is life-changing. And the more that you do it, the more accustomed you become, and the more skilled you will be at any kind of coaching skills in clinical practice, and just a better person to talk to with your loved ones and friends and acquaintances as well.
Mm-hmm. Marie, I love that you said that it kind of seems like it's common sense, but when you actually try doing it, I feel like when I first started trying to actually do it with, my family and friends, I felt awkward, and then they kind of felt awkward because they're like, why are you just asking me questions? And like trying to, like, they could tell they I think, didn't really like explicitly realize, but inside they kind of felt like that I was like digging a little bit. And so they were a little confused. And then for me, I knew that I was purposely phrasing the question in a certain way, but it definitely led to a lot more engaging conversations, to finding out more about them and the way that they think. And it's definitely a challenge at first, more challenging than you think it is, but does lead to very interesting results.
It was definitely my experience as well, with some friends really noticing right away what I was doing. One of them stopped and says, wait, are you coaching me now? I was like, oh, well, no, I'm just your friend driving the car, but yes, I guess I am practicing my coaching skills. So with a few of my friends, I've had to be explicit when I practice these very specific skills. But I have found that when I can do it, even with tough interactions with friends and family, like they've had a tough day or something is going on in their life and they just want to share and vent, it's incredible to just pause and just repeat back what they're saying to you, and really not go into my fix it mode and not try to help them problem solve and help them see the world differently, but just reflect back to them. And so that is the one thing that, if only one thing leaves here with you after an hour of this workshop today, if you are able to practice just once a day with one interaction every day, using some reflective statements, you will see the power of those statements in your interactions, and you're going to become more facile at doing them. And then may see the value for using them with your patients and clients as well. The other part, our other tips, in terms of where to start with coaching, if you can, if you're infusing coaching into your practice, is what we're calling reflective responding. Now, we do ask, as clinicians, we do ask questions all the time, right? I went to the physical therapist last week, and I was probably asked, 50 questions in a 20-minute time span. The same thing if you go to the doctor's office. So, but the vast majority of the questions that we ask in our clinical world are fact-founding missions. What's working, what's not working. And we're really asking questions for the purpose of using our own clinical reasoning to support the clients and our patients. When you're engaging in reflective responding or asking questions in that way, the questions that you are asking are really created for the clients themselves to get their own insights. And you saw that in a few of the questions that I was asking Lydia in that coaching session. Right? I was asking your questions, and they did provide me with some information, but mostly the questions were phrased and designed to help her gain some insight. I wasn't drilling down, as Rachel was saying, I wasn't drilling down into, all the nitty gritty of what was going on, and, asking about all the things that were causing problems. And I was really sort of asking questions so that she could do the exploring. So practicing asking those kind of questions, asking a question where you're not attached to the answer, but you really want your client to come up with their own insights, is something that everyone can do and infuse in their practice. You can ask even just one question, in your practice. I'm wondering, Nicole or Rachel, if you can think of a couple of the ways that we could ask simple questions like that pretty much in any practice that we have. I put them on the spot. I have an idea, so I'll be the first one generating an idea this time. And that idea was just ask the client, what do you think might help? Go ahead, Rachel.
I think that one thing that you did in the video with Lydia that is great is just asking about like what works for you. And just finding about their routines, because even when they're answering that question and like thinking about what they do with their day-to-day life now, they sort of start reflecting and coming to certain conclusions.
I think another good one is like, if you've ever experienced something like this before, what have you tried, or what worked or what didn't work? Because then it can start kind of understanding what worked and what didn't work, and maybe some of the reasons behind that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not a specific response, but I think making sure that you're keeping them in the now, in the present. I think a lot of times as clinicians and just people, we tend to look to the future and what we hope to do and what we wish to do. And it's so easy for someone to talk about, oh yeah, I'm going to some future idea, or to like talk about the past and, oh, I wonder why I can't do this now. But then I think something very important, just rooting them into the present and really delving deep into the now.
Thank you both. Those are really great examples. And I'm sure in your head, as you're listening, you're also thinking about some of the, depending what your clinical practice is, some of the questions that you could ask of your clients and patients and their family members starting tomorrow. And I said starting tomorrow, and I did that on purpose, because the other thing that you guys can do in infusing coaching principles into your practice is really helping your clients nail down the plan. And so even if in the end you have to give a recommendation, you can't, as a physician, let the patient decide what medication they're going to try, right? Like you have to be the one, prescribing the medication. But maybe there's something other than medication. Maybe you're making a recommendations for, chiropractic or physical therapy for, low back pain. Helping the client think through and talk through when and how they're going to do this. First, it's going to help you figure out whether it's likely that they will actually do it, right? If you say, well, you should go to physical therapy to work on this, and the client nods their head, yes, 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 right? And you ask, so, well, what do you think is the first step? Like, well, I need to get the phone number, but the last time I went to physical therapy 6 months ago, I learned that the insurance company doesn't pay for any physical therapist that lives within an hour from me. So that just isn't going to work, right? And so you've asked one simple question, and you would know right away that the client is not likely to go to physical therapy. And then you can make a different recommendation. So really helping the client nail down their plan, operationalizing it and making it concrete, is going to do two things. It's going to help the clients. It's going to help you know whether it's likely or not that they'll implement the recommendation, and it's going to help anchor that recommendation in the client's mind so that they're actually more likely to follow through. Once we verbalized that what we're about to do or what we want to do, then we're much more likely to actually do it. I see Nicole and Rachel nodding. Do you guys both agree? You want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think in a lot of situations and conversations with someone, it might end with like, yeah, I think this is what I'm going to do. And in coaching, you don't want to leave it like that. You want to end with like, okay, so this is what you think you're going to do, or you're doing it. And then really helping them figure out a plan, because I think even for myself, I need to make myself accountable. So if I say to Rachel, if she were coaching me, I'm going to do this tomorrow at 3:00, and I know I told Rachel that, then I want to be accountable to myself that I'm going to get that done, because I now have a concrete action step and plan in place.
Yes, absolutely. And Nicole, you were saying if you're doing coaching, but even you can do that even if you're not doing a full coaching session. You can definitely just infuse that in what you do with every single patient interaction. So we're coming to the end of our time. So we have a few more slides here that talks about the value of coaching in some studies. This is from the client's perspective. I mean, I will just read one. With coaching, I am more productive, proactive at getting my own things done. And now I know what is preventing me from being successful. The coach gave me the opportunity to bounce ideas off and find solutions for myself. Those are also the things that the clients that we've coached have said about the value of coaching to them. We also have some numbers about how effective coaching is. And then we have the coach's perspective around coaching. So not just the three of us and our voices about what works well about coaching, but then other voices as well. All right. Supposed to have given you time for questions, but I will give you time for a question in just a second. We have a minute, but we will happily take questions by email as well if you have questions. So as we're opening the floor for questions, I'm going to show you this next slide in case coaching sounds interesting to you and you want to read more. We've published some article on the topic, and we're doing some additional workshops on coaching. We also offer some courses on coaching and an advanced practice certificate.
So I said Nicole has shared her email if anyone has additional questions that you'd like to share. And I would just like to thank Dr. Potvin, Dr. Kim, and Nicole for a very informative presentation. If you would like to learn more about the Advanced Certificate in Coaching in Context, you can visit jefferson.edu/coachingapc. We also invite everyone who's attending this evening to get connected with your fellow alumni on the brand new Jefferson Alumni Network at alumninetwork.jefferson.edu. And we really look forward to seeing a lot of you in person this summer. We have a full schedule of events that you can visit and register at jefferson.edu/alumni events. Thank you all once again to our presenters and to everyone who's joined us this evening. We wish you well and hope that you enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.